So A Friend is a project which was conceived in late 2018 by Massimiliano Gioni in collaboration with the Trussardi Foundation. Massimiliano is the director of the new museum here in New York, and he's been curating these projects with the Trussardi in Milan for quite a while now. So when I was invited actually to realize a project for the 2019 edition, I thought, what could I make? But it's a unique project where every single project is not in a given the same location. It takes the form of any space in the city. So we're looking at this two buildings, historical buildings in Milan, Porto de Venezia, which used to be these historical gates into the city. And we thought, what would it be if we somehow covered these structures with these jute sacks? And particularly at the time when there's the right of the right wing in Europe, of course around the whole world, but looking at the Italian situation, the idea was to create a work that would enforce or create this new dialogue, because there are a lot of people in Italy who are torn between the idea of letting migrants in versus those saying that, oh no, we don't need these migrants, they're only coming to take our jobs, blah, blah, blah. But forgetting that the entire world and Europe actually has been based on the idea of exploitation for many generations, So these materials almost become like these symbolic values, but in a way creating a work that allows for a certain dialogue that goes a long way to create these proposed new systems and all that. So we decided just to sew these bags together and then cover these two buildings. And it generated a lot of controversy because a lot of people, first and foremost, wouldn't recognize it as art in the first place. And I think that's the most exciting thing, because as far as we make work that anyone can see sometimes and say, oh, this is art, for me, sometimes I think that you failed already. But the excitement is when there is a lot of discussions around it, to even settle on the form. What does the form truly mean? Yeah, what does it really mean? And that's where the point of the work was. So I think it was there for quite a while, and we got a lot of support from the mayor of Milan. Of course, a lot of people were not happy about it because they said, first and foremost, it's almost as if they are trying to desacralize these two buildings, and secondly, proposing something as art which doesn't appear to be art in its form, and thirdly, also with the social commentary of the work in relation to migration issues and all that. It seemed something that was very dense, but I thought it was beautiful.
Why is it called A Friend, and what do the buildings have to do with the migration issue?
Yeah, so the projects were titled A Friend because I needed to title the project. And in the last years, I was always titling my works after important literature that was done. And there is literature by a female author that died quite young, who wrote two books, one of which was A Friend, Maria Maba from Senegal. And I thought it was actually, the content of the book was actually quite beautiful. And also in memory of her, I decided to title it A Friend, the project A Friend. And A Friend simply just because, literally looking at the idea that two historical spaces that were a point of division, even within a city itself. Suddenly the city has somehow outgrown itself. And these buildings, when you think about them, you no longer see them as spaces where you'd have to pay tax historically in order to enter Milan. It's part of Milan now. Yeah, so I was looking at it in relation to the current migration crisis and thinking about it maybe in a much more futuristic manner. What would it be if we woke up tomorrow and there were no boundaries within the world? Just as this building, which was once a boundary, even within the city itself, suddenly seems to be very dissolved. Yeah.
So you're covering the buildings to take away kind of the border character of them.
Yes, the border character was already taken away, but by covering it, I think it made it a lot more complicated, because suddenly you realize how much these buildings, the histories that came with this building, and secondly, the complexity of it, because when you go to the coffee shop to buy coffee or anything, and you don't really think about the migrant worker who is trying to cross the border to come to you, whereas the labor of their produce is something that you use all the time. But due to international regulations, there are countries around the world, like for instance Ghana, since the 60s, we do not have processing plants for cocoa, like Ivory Coast, with Ivory Coast and other places. So it means that at the end of every year, when we produce the cocoa that comes to America, Europe, and other places, which the world market around it is about 150 billion, we only make about less than 2 billion because we export them as raw commodities because of regulations from the World Bank and the IMF, blah, 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 the EU and all that. So at the end of the day, the surplus, the excess capital, is what is used in the funding of NGOs and all that come back to the continent, say, stop child labor on farms. But what do you expect a farmer to do if he does not earn the right amount of money for his produce? He's going to eventually have more children to help him in the farm. So I think there is, not to say it is right, but fundamentally there's a deep crisis which has always been at hand, which has never really been addressed properly as it's supposed to be. So if we really want to look at the ideas of solving the inequalities in the world, we fundamentally have to come to a point of really facing the truth about the systems which are created to somehow destabilize the rest of the world in order for other parts to have their so-called freedoms and liberties and everything.